This is the Microcast from Microcosm Coaching. We encourage athletes of all ages, backgrounds, and ability levels to take small steps towards big dreams. Start small, dream big, and get matched today with a Microcosm coach by scheduling a free consultation call. Whether you're running your first 5K or 10th 100 miler, our team of certified coaches can help you reach your athletic goals. Visit us at microcosm-coaching.com to learn more and take a small step towards your big dreams today.
And we're back.
We are back. And I just cracked an NA Blue Moon. So that's the energy we're bringing to the podcast today.
It's a little early it's 8 a.m.
It's not, it's 4:07. I'm going to let the people decide for themselves because I am a little self-conscious about it because 4:07 on a Tuesday is kind of a weird time to be cracking a Blue Moon, non-alcoholic.
It's non-alcoholic. You can drink those at any time of the day. It's always appropriate.
Would you consider drinking a non-alcoholic beer at breakfast?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. They're pretty good.
Especially the Blue Moon.
Yeah, it's really good.
It's like a mimosa, kind of. Nice
Pretty
and sweet.
mimosa adjacent.
Except for it won't make you feel like crap on your run tomorrow.
Exactly. And I haven't even done my run yet today. So hopefully it helps me feel good even on my night run today.
I think there's some carbs in there.
There's some carbs.
Yeah, maybe some electrolytes.
Yeah. It's pretty balanced, you know?
All right. So
I'm into
basically that's sports nutrition.
That's how I'm thinking about it.
Well, I hope it helps you get through this next approximately 1 hour with your best.
Yeah, I'm ready to bring the A game because we just had an amazing weekend at the Silver Rush 50. So we're going to talk a little bit about your race in Leadville and some takeaways from Silver Rush. And then we're also going to talk, like, our main thing that we're going to talk about today is flexible running frameworks and what to do if you're someone who struggles to stick to a plan or when you need a little more flexibility in your training, but you still want to get better. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to think about that from two expert coaches who work with athletes who are busy people. And we're going to answer a listener question, kind of also about run planning.
No, this question is perfect. And it's a good warm up. Honestly, I'm still a little cognitively slow.
Are you still feeling tired from Silver Rush?
Just a little bit, It's been a full day of work and I am feeling a little tired.
Yep.
So I feel like warming up will get me into this.
Yeah.
And I love talking about flexibility in training because...
How flexible are you with your training? Like, how do you think about that in your own training?
Well, I don't want to get into too many spoilers, but I would say I'm probably moderately flexible.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm not perfectionist.
Yeah.
And I do strive for excellence. It's one of my values.
Yeah.
But within all of that, I know that it's okay to make changes to your training based on how you feel.
Yeah.
And I think that the longer I've been training and the older I get, the more progress kind of necessitates that approach.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I feel like I also have a lot to learn in this realm as a recovering perfectionist, as a perfectionist in recovery. The longer I've been competing and training, the more I've learned that perfectionism is kind of the opposite of excellence.
Yeah.
Like perfectionism is all about managing how you feel, like your emotions, your need to feel like good, enough, perfect, like to perception manage or manage other people's feelings. Whereas excellence is about satisfying your own internal compass and your own internal, like, I know what is enough. This is enough. This is excellent. So I'm excited to maybe get some of your coaching input for me as an athlete.
I mean, it's been a journey for me as well to see that, I do have these tendencies, which I was not as aware of. Actually, therapy is a really great modality for figuring out things that you're not quite aware of, but that are having an impact on the quality of your training and your overall life. But okay, let's get into this question.
Because that's not enough of a teaser for the episode.
Let's get into this question because it touches on this, and then we'll depart. We'll talk a little bit about Silver Rush, my race, seeing so many of our athletes have successful days out there. That was just so freaking great. Okay, here's our question. Hey y'all, I moved a run to the night before it was scheduled. My rest. Maybe you should read this. I feel like I'm struggling.
Oh my God. Have you been driving? Are you okay? Have you been coaching people today?
Yeah, I feel like
God.
this sentence isn't constructed
Okay.
well. You do this.
Okay. Hey y'all, I moved a run to the night before it was scheduled, my rest day, because the weather looked brutal the next day. I work late nights, so this meant I technically ran after dinner on Wednesday instead of Thursday afternoon. I still got the same amount of sleep between runs, but I'm wondering, did I really rest? I've been training by time and effort instead of miles thanks to your show. Love that. And in the moment, I justified the change using that same logic. But afterwards, I started thinking, can we just move runs and recovery around freely as long as we feel okay? Or are there limits to how flexible rest can be?
Such a good question here. Thanks
love
for sending
this.
that in. Love it when the community reaches out, guys. So please, if you got questions for us to talk about on future podcasts, let us know. All right, couple of things here. First, yes, I think that there's some really thoughtful decision making happening, which is excellent. And the listeners doing what we really love and advocate, which is thinking critically about, the effort you're putting into training, rest, how much time you're taking between workouts, and like how it's going to affect your training adaptations. And there's flexibility here, which, when it's intentional, is really helpful.
Yeah.
So I think we're starting from a good place.
Yes, but I think what's helpful and what I sort of want to touch on is that what matters isn't the calendar day, it's the recovery window. And something I always want athletes to remember is that your body doesn't know what a mile is.
Right.
It doesn't know what a minute is. It doesn't know what Thursday is.
Right.
It knows stimulus and rest, right?
Yeah,
like it knows like stress
rest.
and rest. So I think like sometimes the way that we talk about things, especially colloquially, I mean, as coaches, as athletes in this industry, can sometimes like make things seem more definitive than they are. And I think what's important to remember is that your body is only ever taking like the work or the training, like whatever it is, like 60 minutes, 6 miles. That's a proxy for the stress it's experiencing. But it's not understood definitively in those terms the same always. So what I'm saying essentially is that recovery isn't defined by Wednesday off or Thursday run. And what really matters is the time between hard efforts and how much cumulative stress you're carrying, right? And that's why I'm super excited to talk about like flexibility and training, because you can't just like move runs to any day of the week. Like let's say you run Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, rest Friday, run Saturday, Sunday. That like you, depending on how you allocate that stimulus, it's going to be a completely different stimulus, even if it is technically the exact same time at intensity. So if you ran Tuesday and then late again Wednesday night, you might have actually shortened your recovery window more than you realized. So something I wanted to sort of touch on was the 36-hour rule of thumb. And in most cases, we want 36 to 48 hours between high stress sessions, especially if either was long, intense, or high heat. And shifting a run across a sleep cycle isn't always a one-to-one trade for recovery time. So I think it's better to think about these things in hours, because your body doesn't just like reset at midnight while you're asleep, right? Like you're not Cinderella.
There was a little piece here, I think, that was left out, that the run got pushed up because the athlete noticed that it would be very hot during his running window. So he opted to do it the night before instead of the next afternoon, which I can see maybe was a stress mitigation tactic. Like,
right,
it'll be more stressful for me to run in the heat, so I'm going to bump this run up by, however many hours the difference between 10 p.m. and 1 p.m. the next day is. I can't do math right now. But yeah, that is a stress trade-off, right? You're sacrificing some recovery time for the perceived stress that is would then, and the impact of that heat on your training.
So there we're talking risk benefit and trade-offs, right?
Yeah,
like
totally.
If it, is the weather going to impact the workout? So weather could impact the quality of the long run, and so could fatigue. So I think
Right.
it's examining, like, is the fatigue going to be a bigger drain on the long run, or is the heat, right? And sort of deciding which additional like stress stimulus you want to bring into that training session. And I
Mm.
think that, it's important to show that elasticity is real, but it's also not infinite. And there are times where you can bend the plan occasionally, particularly based on weather, life, energy, especially endurance runs. I think those are sort of the easiest
Yeah, our easy
to
runs.
trade around. But doing that can often lead to hidden fatigue. And I think the question isn't, can I do this? It's how often am I doing this and how am I adapting and why? And if it's sort of a one-off for weather, I think that's a lot more understandable than folks who are habitually frequently moving around training sessions, because basically, like, if you think about the training plan you start with, that like your coach gives you, that you designed, that you find online, whatever it is, please don't get it from an influencer, that you're following, like, I had to move my I'm doing 2 long runs a week. I had to move a long run to Friday and then a recovery day to Saturday so that I could crew you at Silver Rush.
Right.
So I was carrying more fatigue into my long run on Friday because I had done a workout on Wednesday, a 2-hour run on Thursday, and then I did a 4-hour run on Friday.
Mm.
That is a meaningfully different training week than if I had done the workout Wednesday, endurance run Thursday, recovery run Friday, and then long run on Saturday.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's way different.
It's a
You're
very,
going to
it's
be
just,
much more tired
Yeah.
for that long run.
yes. And I mean, actually, I felt great and I PR'd my climb up Mount Elbert. So, there's always like the context of this is always heavily caveated. But I think it's really, really important to just understand how that impacts the rest of your training plan. So you're sort of handed this, like, here's what you would do in a perfect scenario. No one's life is perfect. Everyone has to move stuff around. And so I think it's about deciding, like, okay, how much can you, like, what are the risks and benefits of moving things around, and understanding what you lose when you make those switches up.
Yeah. No, it's a good question. I don't know. I don't know if the author of this question was asking us to weigh in on whether this was a good decision or not, or what, is it better to prioritize being fresh and then end up, with the extra stress of the heat, or to do the run sooner and mitigate that heat stress? I think it really depends.
I think it really depends
on a lot of different factors. Like, if that's your long run, and I think this was the athlete's long run, if I'm remembering the whole email chain that we had going on. I think this was the athlete's long run. And because the long run is already so stressful, my advice usually for athletes is to try to do that when it's less hot.
Mm-hmm.
Start that run earlier so you only finish in the heat, or move it around so that way, like, because it's already such a stressful day objectively. So maybe this was a good decision in that context. But just note that, like, if you shorten the recovery period, you also have to manage new expectations for how you're going to feel in that session. And our perception of how we're doing out there has downstream impacts.
Right.
So if we're not updating our expectations, then our perceptions of how we're doing might be changing in a way that doesn't support sustainable training long-term too. So, just some other information there that I think that can be helpful for folks. If you're moving runs around, ask yourself, is it possible that I'll be a little more tired for this? Maybe in ways that I can feel, or in ways that I can't necessarily perceive. If so, how can I adjust my expectations to support a better feeling training and a higher quality training session?
Yeah. So I think, again, takeaways there are your body doesn't just reset with sleep. So it's not just like how many, like, did you sleep between things? You
Right.
really do have to think about it in hours, and, taking into consideration your fueling, your nutrition, all of these other things in between intense training sessions. But yeah, my 10 cents is to really avoid moving around those, like, sort of, like, I call them tent pole sessions, like the workouts and the long runs. The less that you move those things around, the better. However, if there is an advantage to moving it, for instance, if there was going to be like a thunderstorm, so there's like no advantage to, like, for me, there could be an advantage to doing the long run in the heat. If you're doing a race in the heat, that could be a physiological stimulus that you want or need. It may not be for everyone, but, like, let's say there was a storm, you might want to move your long run because there's no physiological advantage to running in a dangerous lightning storm.
Right.
So
Totally.
it's complicated, I think, is where we've landed. But ultimately, I think it just comes down to, I mean, so many factors, your ability to recover, what your goals are, and where you're at in training. And I think like the last sort of seed that I'll plant without being too redundant with our next, with the section about flexibility, is that like the more consistent you are, the less you have to freak out about being consistent.
Right.
Like if you just train for 8 years, then suddenly one long run becomes 1% of a percent of a percent of a percent of a percent of like your training, and it becomes way less. You sort of can let go a little bit easier.
Oh my gosh. I feel like that's the place that I've finally been arriving to in this season of training.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Silver Rush 50 in Leadville, Colorado. I was looking over our Rad Weekend updates in our coaching Slack channel with all of our coaches today, and I feel like I saw 5, maybe 6 athletes across the team who competed and successfully accomplished their goals out there. And that was just so cool.
Yeah.
I think that was one of my favorite parts of the whole weekend, was that it was one of these moments of the summer season where we have a high concentration of the people that we coach across our coaching team. That's athletes that both Zoe and I coach, and the other coaches that work at Microcosm coach. We're at Silver Rush, out there on the course, going through the same highs and the lows that I was experiencing, and still getting those finish line and accomplishing some like pretty serious goals. We had some PRs, folks going under time goals.
Mm-hmm.
Just so cool to see that. Man, I think for me in retrospect, that was probably even better than running
your
a
own
race.
Yeah. I loved crewing and supporting you, and I love going to Leadville. Obviously, that's a very meaningful place to me, and I love that race series. But being there as our athletes like crossed the finish line was so freaking cool, and I actually got pretty misty-eyed just because like when you coach folks, like you get a front row seat to how hard they're working and how much they're putting into it, and like the just, you know, all of the life context that they're bringing, that like, you know, when the announcer says their name and their time when they cross the finish line, they're not saying like how hard they hustled to get childcare. They're not saying like how early they got up so they could get the long run in before a friend's wedding. They're not saying like, you know, all the rigmarole they went through to do a sweat test to dial in the hydration. And so when you have all the context for how hard these people work, I think it just really leaves me with like a sense of awe about what our athletes accomplished.
Totally. I mean, it's really amazing. And it is like, again, a good reminder that, you know, accomplishing a goal doesn't really change us. It's the process that got you all the way to that finish line that creates those meaningful changes. And when you have that context, because you've been with those athletes like throughout that whole process, or you've had a window seat because like another coach that works for us was there, and you've seen, you know, that athlete show up for other races, and you've seen what they've done to get to where they are. I mean, I just think that's the ultimate expression of all of this stuff that we do here.
Yep.
I love that.
Speaking of goals, I wanted to ask you a little bit about goal setting and how you went about doing what you call and what you talk about with your athletes as developing those standards. So can you walk us through that a little bit?
Well, I think it's important to have a little context to why we would create standards.
Yes.
And what standards are.
Yeah. Like, start us at the beginning. 101.
So this is great. Okay. So we have certain goals that we create with our athletes before they go into races. Obviously, we have the most obvious goals, which are outcome goals.
Yeah.
The time,
beagles, and seagulls.
Yeah. The time you want to get, or the place you want to finish in. Those are the outcome goals that are most typical. They're also the goals that are like least in your control. You can't necessarily control what place you get because your competitors are also training and trying to get a good place. And so who knows where you're going to end up in all of that. Time goal is a little bit more in your control because you can control your effort during the race. But there are also a lot of factors that can impact the time. Is it hot? Is it cold? Is it rainy? Is it sunny? Is it windy? Is it dry? Like, there's a lot of different factors that can impact that. So outcome is least controllable.
Yep.
And it's important for athletes to know what they can control during a race. So this is why we have other goals.
Yeah.
We have process-oriented goals, which we've talked about a number of times. Those are the small habits that you commit to completing, like every single hour, every single mile throughout the entire race, that add up to finishing your goal. A great example of this, like one of the first process-oriented goals athletes like almost always set, is like fueling on a regular schedule.
Yep.
I will drink this much with this much sodium at these increments. I will eat this much at these time increments, this many carbs, and rinse and repeat for the whole race.
Yep.
So like that's just a very basic example of a process-oriented goal. Now, athletic standards are kind of in the middle between our outcome goals and our process-oriented goals. And these are the goals that are more about your way of being during the race.
What, like how you want to show up as an athlete and competitor.
Exactly. So like the attitude you want to embody, the effort level you want to put out, the intensity you want to have out there, the quality of being, or like the feeling that you want to embody, the things you want to focus on during the race. Those things are all within your control, including your effort level, even when you're tired, even when the weather's bad, even if you're having a bad day, even if someone passes you, even if it rains in the middle of your race. All of these things are still fully under your control. So if you commit to those things and you know clearly what they are, no matter how your race is going, you can still operate from that place, and it gives you a much better chance of still having a strong finish and accomplishing some of your other outcome goals, even if your A outcome of like, I want to be first place, or I want to be in the top 1%, or I want to go under 10 hours, like even if those goals start to go out the window and get replaced by other goals.
You default to the standards. They're the
Always.
non-negotiables.
Yeah.
So what were yours, and how did that show up in the race for you?
Well, what were my standards? That's a good question. My focus was on being uncomfortable throughout the race. Your focus, when you have a set a standard around focus, is the thing you want to get more of. Where you put your attention, you tend to get more of it. Attention bias kind of way of looking at things. So I wanted more discomfort, because I knew if I was uncomfortable, I'd be maintaining the effort level that I was committing to for the race.
Unfortunately, we've gotten to the point in our ultra careers where I could easily run a 50-mile.
Right.
Like I can bang that out kind of no matter what.
Right.
Which means that if you're running a 50 and it feels good for any amount of it, you're doing it wrong again.
Yeah, like you're not going to be enough on your growth edge to likely accomplish the goals that you're setting. So like I ran this race 3 years ago in 7 hours and 17 minutes. I set a big goal of going under 7 hours and wanting to like get a really big PR.
Yeah.
So what do I need to do that? Well, I need to be more uncomfortable more often throughout the race.
Yeah.
And that necessitated committing to a standard around an effort level of like a 6 to a 7 out of 10 RPE,
right,
essentially. So like right on the edge of my aerobic threshold, spending a little time above it, probably on climbs, and never really going below, like trying to be right on that line of what's sustainable.
Yeah.
The attitude that I committed to was one of curiosity.
Ooh,
so like,
love that. What does that look like for you?
Well, it's no matter what you're feeling, if a doubt comes up, or you're feeling tired, or the effort level is questionable, that you approach that with curiosity. Can I maintain this effort level to that next tree? How will I feel when I get to the high point of the course? Can I get to that next aid station maintaining this effort level? It's questioning everything with openness, rather than letting a doubt come in that might create a situation where I go against my standards and I get conservative.
Yeah.
I also had a couple other standards in there. So like the intensity that I wanted to show up at was actually a relaxed intensity.
Okay.
And a very cool and calm kind of like feeling overall.
Because like normally you're so chaotic and high strung.
That doesn't resonate with me. The chaotic things I sometimes see out on the race course and whatnot. Like I just want to be calm. I want to be cool, level-headed, especially if I'm not feeling good.
Yeah.
And a great way to like look at these standards is to also think about it as like, who do I want to be when stuff gets really hard?
Yeah.
Who do I want to be when things aren't going the way I planned?
Right.
Instead of trying to like figure that out in the moment, you already have a strong place to take action from, which already puts you in an advantage in those situations. And like, as maybe we'll get into, like my race really did not go the way that I thought it would go.
Right.
So I was like, pretty immediately using these standards, not to keep me necessarily from overdoing it, but to actually keep me accountable to competing till the very end of the race.
Yeah. So one of your goals was to compete through the finish line. Did not, spoiler alert, did not PR. You
No.
Finished in 7:17 again, the exact same time.
I finished in, I was 13 minutes slower, 7:29.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's funny because like last year I did Silver Rush and like a few years ago I did it and had a great day and finished in like 8:40. And then last year I had a terrible day and finished at the exact, like within the minute. Consistency. For like your good days get way better, but so do your bad days. Raise the floor.
Oh, like totally. It is really interesting. When I did 7:17, the circumstances were a little bit different. I wasn't sick.
Right.
I wasn't sick going into the race. I was more tapered. But I think, tossing out those things, the effort for the 7:17, I had to work way less hard for that. So I had to work much harder for 7:29 this time around, just for whatever reason, just how it went. Like every time you race, it's a little bit different. And it's a good thing to check yourself. Like, just because 3 years had passed and I'm clearly a fitter athlete than I was then does not necessarily mean I'm guaranteed to get that PR.
Right. And that time isn't a referendum on you or how the training's going because like, again, like you didn't taper for it. So there's always that context too. So I'd love to know a little bit more about how this fits in with the long arc of your training and like how you think about both developing weaknesses and strengths when it comes to races like this.
Well, I think, the way that I like to look at this is like, what was the result of what happened during the race? The result was I accomplished one of my goals, which was to re-qualify for the Leadville 100.
Got that coin.
Got the coin. That I did need a certain level of outcome to get that. So that was great. And I did have to stay accountable to my standards to the very end to get that, because I had to pass several athletes who were in front of me in the last 10 miles of the race. I had to pass 3 people to get that. So I had to race really hard to get there. And I think, ultimately what that tells me is like, well, my durability is great, but the stuff that we've been working on in training over time actually has been working in a way that maybe came out in the race in a less obvious way than it would normally come out. And I think one of those things is like that I'm learning throughout this process, and something that I'm going to continue to bring to my coaching with my athletes, is that time-based training is so much better than miles for trail and ultra events. When you know approximately how much time is left in a race, you're much better able to allocate the right amount of effort to leave you with pretty much nothing left in the tank when you're done. And because this was a B race, this was like we talked about this in the last podcast, but this is a stepping stone towards the 100. I was supposed to finish this race with another 10, 12 miles in the tank, like as if this was 100K. And I was maybe didn't adhere to that as much because I really wanted to requalify.
Right.
And I didn't want to leave anything on the table.
Yeah.
So I had to like go hard at the end of the race. And it's questionable if I could have sustained. I'm sure I could have run 100K, but it's questionable if I could have sustained that same like RPE for, a lot longer. So I think it's way easier to allocate the right effort if you've been training by time.
Yeah.
And I think also in conjunction with that, one of the things that I'm learning that's really, really important, I want to keep bringing back to my coaching, is that consistently working on your weaknesses over time is what is going to lead to better results.
Yeah.
It's great to work on weaknesses far out from races. But
then you work strengths closer to races.
Correct. But I'm noticing for myself with where I'm at in this process and the goals that I have is I need to push up how much more I work on those weaknesses.
Right.
And that allowed me to just climb. One of my weaknesses, climbing, and that allowed me to climb more aggressively later in the race, especially after like I wasn't feeling very good with my climbing early. I felt like that time-based allocation of effort combined with like having done so many more uphills in my training gave me the ability to like push a little bit more on the uphills and make up that time.
Yeah.
So, I know there's always that principle, lean into your strengths right before a race, but I also don't want athletes to be shy about really committing to working those weaknesses.
Well, it can also just be like unavoidable, right? Like, right.
But I don't have to do
if someone perceives, like for me, my technical downhilling is a weakness. I'm about to do the Never Summer 100K.
Right.
That doesn't mean I'm avoiding technical downhills right before I need to,
Right.
But it's sort of like
specificity.
Right. Like it, and I would say specificity sort of trumps the like weakness principles. Again, like the more, like for me, VO2 max is also a weakness. And thankfully, I worked that further out from ultra events anyway, because that's a less specific energy system. So again, it's always complicated. And that's where having someone who can look at the long arc of your training and who can help you identify weaknesses, for instance, like looking at your VAM or looking at your IF on uphills relative to your intensity factor or IF on downhills. Like if I have an athlete and their intensity factor is like always like extremely low on downhills, that tells me they're probably pretty timid on those descents.
Right.
Or if someone's IF is extremely like low on climbs relative to descents, that tells me they're probably starting to hike a little bit before they really should.
Yeah, and I think that kind of just leads to this last point of something that I'm really working on with my athletes and also my coach is holding me accountable to is how does this current training fit into a multiple season approach to racing?
That was another thing I thought was so cool is that like, again, like we were talking, maybe it was our last episode or episode before about the find your 747 and comedian Nathan Fielder learning to pilot a 747 airplane. I was like, oh, the Leadville 100 is your 747. Like you were working so hard this summer to get a coin that you will not use until next summer.
Right.
Like you're working a year ahead already.
Totally. And I think that like contextualizing things like that actually and this is probably a really good segue for our next topic about like perfectionism and this like reality of what it's like to train in real life and flexibility is that when we can contextualize things over multiple years, we can start to take the pressure off of ourselves. And like I realized for me during this race, obviously this was a race that like I had aspirations to podium and have been very close to podiuming in the past. You do not have to podium every time to make success, like really great contributions to your like endurance bank and your long-term training potential.
Right.
And so I feel like when I take that pressure off of myself, it's way easier for me to have a more joyous and grateful experience out there, which then are like just really important like essential elements to experience in training that help to sustain the process over multiple seasons. So if you've got that long-term view and you understand how each thing fits and you set proper objectives for each goal, like Silver Rush was all about like testing fueling strategies, seeing how my stomach would handle intensity, fueling up high, new hydration strategy. Like there was a lot like that of process that went into this. And, that helps to, also contextualize a day where I didn't reach a lot of my goals.
Right. But you got the one that really mattered. So gold coin.
Sure.
See you guys at Leadville 2026.
Right.
And again, like if there's just anything people take away from our podcast, like start thinking about your training in years and not weeks.
Totally. Oh my gosh. The mistake of thinking about things in just 1 year at a time, it leads athletes to really rush a lot of processes forward that need way more time to develop, and it makes people inflexible, which is a perfect segue for this, the reality of real life running.
Yeah. So, I think like what we're going to talk about is like when life happens and it interferes with your training, because for many of us, like I don't get paid to train.
Nope.
So I got to do life stuff. I got to work, right? Like I own a business. I am a freelance journalist. Like shit happens, right? For all of us. So like how do you adjust your training to still optimize? So we're going to help folks sort of figure out how to train smarter with anchors, flex days, and effort-based plans so that you can stay consistent when life gets messy and complicated.
I have to hit this point here because you glossed it, and I think it's great to put up front because some people might just like stop the podcast here. I want to reassure everybody that you're not lazy or uncommitted if you miss runs.
Everyone does.
Yeah, everyone misses runs. And this kind of like blew my mind, right? Research, Keller et al., Stress and Health, 2012 showed that average adults face 1 to 2 unexpected life events per week.
Actually,
oh my God.
When I found that study, I actually made a mental note and I forgot to see if there's a more recent study because that study is from 2012.
I know it's old, but it feels right.
I mean,
vibe.
My curiosity is like, I feel like the world has gotten a little more chaotic.
Right? I feel like there's 1 to 2 unexpected life events per week.
Also, I was in high school in 2012. God bless.
In just like the news cycle.
Yeah. So yeah, all of that is to say like shit happens. It happens to everyone and it does no one good to like beat yourself up about it. In fact, like folks who like get down on themselves when they miss training, you might think like if I'm hard on myself and if I engage in negative self-talk and if I'm just like a douche David Goggins to myself, that will shame myself into re-engaging with the training. That doesn't work.
That's great for longevity, guys.
Not good for longevity. That is not an effective mental strategy. The research does not back that up. Don't be a dick to yourself. So, let's talk a little bit about why rigid training plans don't work for busy athletes or really anyone.
I think that's really important. Let's just put that right up front because rigid plans assume every week is identical. And
my life is not.
It's not. And that's going to cause people who miss runs to like end up in a guilt spiral. That guilt is something that like I've seen impact a lot of athletes. Those red days and training peaks have a psychological effect. And so like I missed Tuesday's workout. Now the whole plan is ruined. The whole week is ruined. I'm not going to train at all. I'm not going to get anything in. Like on an extreme end, I've seen that many, many times as a coach.
Oh yeah. Someone will miss one day and then they'll either experience shame around the glowing red box, or they'll be like, oh no, I don't want to tell my coach I didn't run because they'll be mad at me. That's not what we do, guys. Like, I'm here to make the training work for you. I'm not like a mean nun at Catholic school. Also, I can't hurt you. I'm virtual. Like, nothing I can do. But I'm also not here to shame you when like you're a human who experiences human life. But sometimes athletes will like perceive shame around missing the run, and then they won't want to tell their coach, and then the training log starts to become a place that is challenging to approach. So for those of you who are our athletes, like, no shame, holla at your girl.
No, totally.
We also have crazy lives.
I think it's important to recognize like, where does that guilt come from? Why do I feel shame? It almost implies is that like the coach has a judgment that you did badly or you did wrong for missing your run. And it assumes that like we have an expectation of what you're supposed to do or what you're not supposed to do. And, I can't speak for other coaches, but I don't really hold an expectation. So I can't be disappointed in an athlete for missing a run or not.
I do not experience any emotion around my athletes missing training because it is just a normal fact of life.
Right. And it's just like, you did the training or you didn't do the training. Let's take that information and move forward.
Yes. Let's adapt the training with the information. Yeah.
2021 review in Frontiers in Psychology found perfectionism in athletes predicts increased burnout and lower adherence during training interruptions.
Yeah. So athletes with flexible goals will show better mental health and a higher likelihood of maintaining physical activity during stressful periods. And that's in a study from the International Journal of Sport and Exercise Psychology. So again, if you're thinking about training is so rigid where it's like, I have to run 30 miles in a week, or I have to run 6 days in a week, or I have to do doubles, or I have to strength train every single day, that you might think you're doing yourself a performance favor by beating yourself over the head with that rigidity. But in fact, the research shows that that actually makes you more likely to disengage with the training and more likely to burn out, and or like from a mental perspective, and start to hate the training and have it feel like a chore, because then it becomes this all or nothing proposition.
Right. And then we get into this whole area of catch-up miles.
There's no such thing as makeup miles, guys. Not a thing.
I don't like those makeup miles at all. I often tell athletes to just take the extra rest day.
Miles don't exist.
And often that extra rest day is probably more valuable than the training that they were trying to make up or they missed. So just to keep that in mind, sometimes if we miss a day, it's for a really good reason. And we should listen to that and just take the 0 day if we have to. All right, let's talk about training flexibility and a framework for training flexibility.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about how flexible frameworks can balance structure, or what I like to call anchors, with adaptability, what I like to call flex days, so that you can adjust without losing your direction and still training to complete your goals. So the key elements of this are those anchor workouts. And those are the sessions that we do maybe 1 or 2 times a week that really drive progress. So it's going to be your workouts and your long run. So anything with intervals, and anything over, I usually say anything over 90 minutes is a long run, but like your longest run or 2 runs
relative
of
to
the week.
relative to your average training.
And then there's flex days. So these are days like easy runs, hikes, bikes, or rest. And that can give you a little more flexibility day to day based on your energy, schedule, and stress.
Auto regulation. So adjusting volume or intensity by checking how your body feels. This is supported actually by quite a bit of research, and it also shows us that RPE-based training can be as effective as heart rate or pace-based training. So listening to how you feel and responding based on how you feel can be very, very helpful. I will say there are some limitations to that. If we are always listening to how we feel and we're kind of like using that as an excuse not to do our stressful days.
This is where self-awareness becomes extremely important. Like, you might be more of a Zoe, and you, because you've engaged in therapy and self-exploration, you know that you have a tendency towards perfectionism that looks like overdoing it.
Right.
And that means that when you check in with yourself, you will go looking for evidence to support that you just want to go do the thing anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so you're going to cram the workout in, you're going to cram the long run in. Like I used to do, like I remember once last year when I was working on this TV show in Denver, I basically drove on I-70 for 3 hours, got to Carbondale at like 9:30 at night, and did a run like in the dark in November in the snow at like 9:30 at night. And that was a light bulb moment for me of like,
that was
like, I was
not
like,
smart.
I don't think I'm being like, this isn't like cool girl dedicated to the sport. This is like a maniac. Like
Totally.
This is maniac behavior.
And I think we do. And I again, like if you're one of those athletes who does tend to, find reasons not to rest, you need to look at that. What are the unconscious beliefs that are driving those behaviors? Because we don't do things for no reason.
Right.
There's always good reason behind our actions. We just need to bring awareness to that. For a lot of people who take that all or nothing approach that you were mentioning there, that's a nice cover over insecurity around not doing enough in the training. And
Working
feeling like you're not enough.
does give you temporary reprieve from being insecure, but
right.
does not work for very long. And then, on the other side of things, there are athletes that instead of pushing through, err on the side of pulling back. And again, This is where you need to sort of like look at your training log. If you have more red days than green, you might fall into this category. Or if you're someone who's taken a lot of 0 days unintentionally, fall into this category of like, an athlete that has like a light headache, so the run doesn't happen, which is like my least favorite phrase. Like
a light headache.
No run has ever just happened. Yeah, like the light headache or like overslept. Like I think, the folks who like
stressful
just
work
repeatedly err on the side of not completing the workout.
I mean, it does really, and I hope this welcomes in just some non-judgmental self-evaluation for everybody. Like I'm thinking about me when I say that too.
Again, like it's no, it doesn't make you cooler if you overdo it on training. Like, again, that's still maniac behavior, not fucking cool. Like, go to therapy.
So should we get into a little bit of why time and effort matter more than mileage in these
Yeah.
situations?
So, time on feet and perceived effort that account for terrain, weather, fatigue, and stress provide a much more accurate measurement of training load than raw mileage. So, sort of thinking like if you do 8 miles on flat roads, for some folks, that could be an hour. But if you do 8 miles with 2,000 feet of climbing, that's like 2+ hours for
Right.
most people. But a lot of rigid mileage goals will treat those as equivalent. So, folks that are having those overly like who are a slave to the Strava graph. That doesn't account for this sort of nuance here. So there's studies that show that running economy and aerobic adaptations actually correlate much more with cumulative time at intensity than total distance. So like, again, like there's just so many reasons, both from like capturing the nuances of training and both like trying to optimize your training load. Time-based training is going to be more effective there. And RPE, what we talk about a lot, enables you to incorporate even more flexibility into your training. Like if you are, someone who's just like, I'm going to go run 8 miles in the gray zone no matter what, well, it's not very flexible. But if you default to RPE or rate of perceived exertion, that allows you to adjust for poor sleep, work stress, or potentially like unexpected travel, right? Like if you're feeling fresh, you can get into that zone too. But if you're exhausted, that's like maybe a really good sign to pull back and take a recovery day.
So how do we build a flexible week with evidence-based anchors, and how do we anchor workouts? I think the first thing we want to talk about is prioritizing 1 or 2 purposefully intense or stressful runs a week. So an example of this might be a session of threshold intervals and a long run, or 2 sessions of threshold intervals in a week. So we want to have training that is periodized and polarized. And so in that approach, we have to work on some kind of intensity in order to have meaningful adaptation, whether it's threshold intervals or 5 or 10K work, VO2 max. Maybe we're doing more steady state runs. Doesn't really matter what it is, as long as it's part of an overarching structure to your yearly training. Have one of those sessions weekly if you can. Also have a long run weekly if you can. Ideally, we have 1 speed session, 1 long run.
A good rule of thumb is I like a long run to be approximately 20% of total weekly volume in one day, because that is, again, like here's another thing that you should not do at random for flexibility is just splitting your run up. Athletes are always like, oh, well, I can't run 6 hours or 6, I don't have an hour and a half to run in the morning, but I could do 45 minutes in the morning and 45 minutes in the afternoon.
Well, let me just piggyback off that for a second.
And those are 2 meaningfully different stimulus.
Yes, please do not do that. And also, do not randomize your interval training or your speed workouts.
Yeah.
It is not successful. You will not gain meaningful fitness. It's important to work on one adaptation type at a time for an extended period of time and then move on to another. Either start with shorter intervals first and finish that build with longer intervals, or do the reverse. Start with longer intervals first and finish with shorter intervals. Work on one adaptation type at a time. People who go to like weekly track club meetups for speed work, you guys aren't getting any meaningful benefits from those sessions because you're not working on the same systems repeatedly. And studies show that randomized speed interventions don't yield the same amount of adaptations as working on one system at a time.
You will have some amount of adaptation because you are still spending some time at intensity, but again,
much lower
it's
percentages.
Random, and so there's going to be like you're not optimizing. So like
always be optimizing.
I mean, again, that's like the difference. Like if someone is like, if I don't go to these community track workouts, then I'm not going to do speed work, then girl, go to those track workouts. Like a little speed is better than nothing. But again, just depending on how your community manages it, who's running it, like it's not going to be tailored for like what your weaknesses are and what your strengths are and what your objectives are. Because like you and I are very different athletes. And even when we were training for the exact same race, the 75-mile UTMB Chianti, we had extremely different training because for you, VO2 max is the strength. And
Right.
for me, it's a weakness. My strength is aerobic threshold. For you, aerobic threshold uphill workouts at that lower intensity is a weakness.
Right.
Therefore, our training was extremely different. So you cannot just copy someone else's training and expect the same results for your specific physiology.
I know. And it probably makes me sound inflexible here as we are talking about flexibility. If you like those track workouts, I can tell you 20 reasons why you shouldn't do them. But if they do get you out there doing some speed work, it's a great starting point.
Yep.
And perhaps over time, we can graduate to a level of training that's more specific than that. And you'll benefit from that. But it's always good to start somewhere. I think you're really right about that, Zoe. So flex days. Let's talk a little bit about this in proactive recovery. You want to get us started?
Yeah, so you sort of have those two anchor days, right? The workout and the long. Ideally, you want to have at least 2 days of 36 hours minimum between those two anchor points, right? Because those are high stress. And you will get more benefits from that high stress if you are more rested going into it.
Yes.
Like if you are tired going into a long run, it's not going to be as effective. If you're tired going into a workout, well, you're not going to be able to execute on the effort and it's not going to be as effective. So that's like one of the reasons that we are really intentional about what goes where and why you can't just like train willy-nilly and expect the same results. So between those anchor points, we can have some flex days. So you can fill some of those remaining days with easy runs. So recovery runs or endurance runs. I like between two anchor points between the workout and the long run to have an endurance day and at minimum one rest or recovery day. So that could be a 60-minute or less recovery run or a full rest day or a cross training day where the intent is that active recovery.
And I think on that endurance day, you can adhere to some more flexibility where if you feel tired, you can go at a 4 out of 10 RPE.
Yes.
You can lower your effort and still get a lot of the same benefits as if you were at a 5 or a 6 out of 10 RPE and really pushing that endurance effort. Also, if you're overwhelmed, just rest.
Yes.
It's always okay to rest. It's not usually very good to force tired miles, but if you notice that you're consistently taking extra rest, that might be a reason to like take a 30,000-foot view of overall life stress in the context of your training. What habits, what lifestyle changes can I make to better support my training? You know, typically athletes should only be taking 1 or 2 rest days a week.
So I do want to talk about the rest days because it is the most important day of the week.
Yes.
Because it is the day where your body actually adapts to the training that you are doing. So I think that it is so, so important. And I think that oftentimes athletes see a rest day, right? Like they see the number 0 minutes, 0 miles. There's like on Training Peaks, there's a little picture of a couch and they think, I'm doing nothing. Therefore, I can always move doing nothing around. Right. Therefore, I can do a ski on the nothing day, or I can do power yoga or wall Pilates or
Strength
XYZ
training.
Thing that is not respectful of the concept of 0 and that undermines the space that your body needs to make those adaptations. And so I think like the biggest misconception that athletes have about flexibility in their training plan is skipping rest days and how much that undermines your training, not respecting those rest days. Because again, like just really like being like, oh, I'm just going to randomly move my rest day to the day after my workout. Well, now you're going into your workout with, instead of 3 days of cumulative fatigue, 6, 10? Like, what are you bringing to that workout now?
Right.
How high quality is it going to be?
How polarized is your training?
Polarized is your training, and that all of that is going to impact like the way that you recover from that workout and the way that you are actually able to execute that workout. And so I think that like I would almost consider a rest day one of those anchor days that you really want to avoid moving as much as you can. And again, don't treat it as if it's nothing, because it is the most important day of your training.
Yeah, I mean, that's an anchor day, right? Like things move around the set rest day.
Yep.
Like ideally things move around the set speed work or workout day and the set long run day.
Right. For instance, like it's not useful. Like let's say you're an athlete that runs 5 days a week and you rest Monday, run Tuesday, rest again on Wednesday. That doesn't make a ton of sense.
No,
like,
you're in a lot of trouble by the time you get to Saturday's long run.
Because you're going to be so tired. But then when you do your run on Tuesday, well, you're also not like meaningfully accumulating enough fatigue to be adapting to it strategically, which
Right.
you need to accumulate some amount of strategic fatigue to teach your body how to adapt to it, right? Like we need to overreach in order to grow.
All right, let's get into some effort-based adjustments and science and practical examples. All right, so RPE-based training reduces injury risk by adapting workout load to your physiological state. And some example scenarios of this is like, okay, I have a planned workout, threshold workout on a Wednesday, but in reality, I have poor sleep and I had a stressful work day. So instead, the adjustment here that you could make is converting that to an easy run or a rest and shifting that threshold session to Thursday or Friday when you're feeling a bit fresher.
Yeah, I would actually say, and again, like it always depends. Like, if I have an athlete that wants to switch around the workout, I would say doing it the day. It maybe potentially depending on the athlete, right? If it's someone who's injury prone, I would say if we have a chance to plan ahead, let's do that at the start of the week. So it's less risky and we're carrying less fatigue into the workout. If you're not super injury prone and or you can't plan ahead, maybe you can take that Wednesday workout and do it on a Thursday with the understanding that you're carrying a little more fatigue into it. So you need to make sure that whatever you do on Wednesday, you're setting yourself up for success. Maybe that's taking the 0 day and allowing your body to have additional space and resources to adapt so that you're fresher going into the workout, or maybe it's a recovery run, an endurance run. But understanding that when you execute the workout on Thursday, you will be additionally fatigued and you sort of have to calibrate your expectations accordingly. However, it may not be useful to keep pushing it back in the week to Friday because, like, if you do, right? Because, like, you don't want to do a workout the day before your long run because, again, you're carrying even more fatigue into that workout, and then bada bing, bada boom, you're probably going to be going into that long run on your last legs.
Well, 90% of athletes aren't going to do a workout before their long run,
Correct.
But a lot of athletes need that stress in order to create fatigue.
Right.
So it's a little dependent there. One of my little gripes that I'm just going to mention here is if you're an athlete who does have a coach, you're not actively conveying that fatigue and that sleep in close to as real time as possible to your coach, that creates a situation where it's very hard to introduce flexibility into the plan. Now, if you're a self-coached athlete, you can easily make those adjustments as you go and then kind of like fix what's happening downstream, right? But if you're an athlete who works with a coach, likely you got a plan in place for next week too, or you kind of have a bit of a roadmap to know where you need to go. So it's important to, when you feel those things, convey that information so that everything can be adjusted, because the longer you wait to convey that information, the less flexibility that you're going to have.
Yeah.
So that can make things really challenging.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the mental component of flexibility in training. So there's research that shows that athletes who are able to frame missed sessions as learning opportunities are much better at maintaining motivation than those who ruminate on perfection, which like that checks out. So I think it's important for athletes to practice that self-talk and tell yourself that missing one workout won't derail months of progress, right? Like the more you train, the smaller the percentage of training, even like your peak long run becomes, right? And to reframe goals as process focused, like hitting your anchors, listening to your body, versus outcome focused, like weekly mileage totals. Like, how do you want to show up as an athlete? Like, train every day that it's productive, I think is a great sort of like process goal. So that way it reframes it as not trying to hit some arbitrary benchmark, but it's much more about checking in with your body. Am I in a state where this training session that's assigned is productive? If yes, do it. If no, let's take that adaptation day, dog.
Yeah, totally. Takeaways. So flexible frameworks make training more sustainable and enjoyable, especially for busy runners. I would be surprised if, there was 1% of people listening to this who didn't feel like they were busy.
Oh my God, reach out. I want to know you.
Yeah. How did you figure it out? Like I feel
How's
like
that trust fund going?
I feel like busyness is inevitable in pursuing anything meaningfully. And so life is full. How do we work our training around that? Well, developing a flexible mindset around this stuff, working with your anchors and being flexible on the other days is a great starting approach. And as you get more comfortable, you can learn to, move things around more strategically based on how you feel. But I think that's like at the basic level, move things around the workout in the long run, move things around the rest day, and maintaining that pretty rigid rest day, knowing that that's your kind of like the day where your mental, emotional, and in your physiological, your hormonal, all the way in your central nervous system, all of that gets a chance to really rest, reset, and adapt to the stress that you're putting under it. Whether that stress is training or life related, having a day off of training can be very meaningful to resetting and getting other things in your life done that you need to get done too. So it really plays both ways.
Yeah. And again, I think that using effort as a way of injecting more flexibility into your training, using RPE-based training, is extremely important. And it allows for more consistent aerobic gains without the pitfalls of rigid mileage chasing. And I think that, in conclusion, I think that like whether you work with a coach or you're self-coached, write things out in advance, right? Like having things like set out in like an actual planner is actually going to help you build that strategy, is actually going to help you see where those anchor points are and see those things where you can be flexible, and just understanding that you can't infinitely move things around and expect that the outcome is the same.
I would really recommend, if you're a self-coached athlete, a planner and plan out weeks of training.
Yes.
Even if you have to move stuff around, plan it out, because if you're not doing that, it's so much easier to just end up winging things and doing it based on how you feel. And then your training becomes really randomized and you neglect the important periodization, polarization that is necessary in actually having meaningful growth and over time and progress. And oh man, I can't tell you, like, the accountability factor of seeing that on a schedule as well is just very, very important if you're an athlete who's like more early on in this process, just learning how to figure out, like, in building in the habit of training.
Use a spreadsheet, use Training Peaks, use a planner, because if you don't know what your baseline volume is, then you're not going to be able to both give yourself deload weeks that are well below the baseline and or incorporate progressive overload, which is above that baseline. But again, this is also where I would make the plug that having a coach who can help think about these things for you is extremely helpful.
So we'd love to hear from you guys. How do you deal with training balance? How do you deal with unexpected chaos in, a messy life and in a crazy existence that we call being humans? DM us, email us. We'd love to hear from you and even maybe share some of your stories on the next episode. As usual, reach out. Microcosm Coaching at gmail.com, microcosm-coaching.com, Microcosm Coaching on Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. We've got some roster spots available. Check us out. Reach out. All right. We'll see you guys next week.